If you've been following me on Instagram or YouTube, you would know that I disappeared for a minute, and I'm here to share the story why. Whew. I swear I cannot find my words, and I'm starting to get emotional. I gave a testimony about this at church a few months back, but obviously I couldn't go into details, partly because of time, but also because I don't think I was fully ready to talk about it back then. So now that I am back on social media, I feel like I need to address this, also because it is my testimony, and I feel that anything really is worth God's praise, also because through this encounter, as traumatic as it was for me, I was able, like now in hindsight that I look back at it, I was able to see God's hand in it pretty much from the beginning. So I feel like it's all glory to him, and I need to get it off my chest pretty much. So I received a call one day, let's say June, July-ish. I received a call from a girl who happens to be from the same country as I am, which is Namibia. And for the sake of this video, we're just gonna call her Sarah, okay? I received a call from Sarah, and she basically told me that she needed a place to stay, right? So at the time, I was renting a 2-bedroom apartment, and I was living alone, so I had an empty room to spare. So when she asked me, I didn't think much into it. Mind you, I know Sarah. I've known her since I've been in this country, which is 8 years now, but we are not close, right? So I felt as someone who's obviously from the same country as I am, and we have somewhat of a decent relationship, if I could call it. It's not even that, but somewhat of a decent acquaintanceship, right? So I didn't see any harm in it, and I was like, okay, why not? Here's someone calling for help, and this is help that I can offer, so why not? So she came over to my apartment, she checked it out, and at the time that she gave me the call, she said it was going to last for about 2 weeks, right? So she came with a bag with her clothes, and so we got to talk, and she basically explained how the environment in school was not conducive for her. Also, she is doing her, she's doing her higher education studies. I still want to keep her anonymous, just because regardless of everything that has happened, I do not wish any harm upon her, and I just don't want any animosity towards her, right? So even as whoever is watching this video, just try not to be harsh towards either people, really, but just as I said, I'm sharing this as my testimony, and however people may take it, that's them. So I'm gonna try and filter out as much detail just for her own safety as well. So yeah, she came with her 2 weeks worth of clothes and stuff. Then we got to talking, and I was telling her how I had about 2 weeks left on my lease, and I was gonna move apartments. So usually we pay apartments, we pay 1 month of rent in advance, which is used as a deposit. And when you move apartments, they return that deposit to you, granted that nothing is broken in the house and that you've held up your side of the contract, right? So I was down to my last 2 weeks, and these are the 2 weeks that she was coming to stay at my place. And so to me, it also made sense, like as she leaves, I also leave, I get my deposit back, which was worth 2,000 RMB. In Namibian dollars, that would be around 4 point something K, right? 4 point something thousand dollars. So I was like, cool, sounds good. We talked, one thing led to another, and it basically came down to us saying that we're gonna rent the apartment together and renew my lease. Now this came about because she felt that the environment in the school was not conducive for her, and she wasn't able to study and concentrate on her school work. So she felt that her moving outside was gonna be a better option. Also, I wasn't being home as much, like I wasn't home all the time. So that would mean that she had a lot of time to herself at home to focus on her schoolwork and stuff. So I remember repeatedly asking her, like, are you sure you want to do this though? Because this means us renewing a new contract, like signing for a completely new lease. And she was like, yes, I'm ready. I want to call your landlord and let's sign a new lease. I don't know why I did not stop to rethink this. I really do not know why. But again, in hindsight, I see how it all played out now. So I'm trying to not beat myself up about it anymore. Also because I've healed from it. And I'm just like, you know what? It is what it is. It is what it is. One thing led to another. And I ended up calling my landlord. And then we signed a new lease agreement. So because we were approaching holiday and we were both students at the time. So we were kind of pressed on cash, right? So we had an agreement with my landlord, which was to allow us to pay for a certain period of time instead of the whole chunk, right? Which he agreed to. Now also, because I had not left the apartment, he did not return my deposit money. And so he kept it as the deposit for this new lease, which was also a mistake on my part, right? So again, another red flag that I should have considered, but I did not. Like, I didn't. So we've signed a new lease, we signed a new contract, and we now had a contract for 1 year. We get into the apartment, right? Like, we're now living. I literally made space for this girl. Like, I cleared out the whole apartment. Like, I cleared out the whole room for her, the second bedroom. I made space for her, like cabinets and everything. This is my new roommate now, right? So that went on for like 2-3 days, I think. Yeah, 2-3 days-ish. And then came the time for us to pay, because now the 2 weeks that I had left, remember, I still had 2 weeks on my old lease. Those 2 weeks were up, right? So now it was time to actually pay for the new one, which I was now leasing with her. So time came and we each paid our half of the rent. Keep in mind, the landlord still keeps my 2K deposit, which she hasn't contributed to. It was fully my 2K. So we get into it, and then Jesus, I feel like I'm starting to get mad all over again, which I shouldn't. Irene, you're okay. Be calm. So after we paid for the new lease, I was spending some time at my partner's house, so I wasn't really home every single day. So I think after a week or so, or 2 weeks after, she calls me up and then she goes, Irene, do you know any foreigners in your building? I'm like, yeah, of course there's like a whole lot of foreigners around the complex. Yeah, but are there any in your building? Because I keep hearing foreigners' voices talking about you and they're really loud and all that stuff. And I was like, I've not that I've met, because I just go home, sleep, wake up, leave home. Like, I'm rarely home and I rarely interact with people, you know, in the building. So I really didn't know. And she goes on and she says, no, there are people here that are threatening you and they're really not happy that you live here. And so I'm like, oh, hold on. What do you mean? What do you mean? So she goes on and she's literally saying the same thing. There are people here that are threatening you and they don't like the fact that you live here. They're jealous of you and they don't like you. And so immediately I go into freaking out mode, because I'm like on social media. And a few months before this, like in 2024, right around January-ish, there was a person that was making fake accounts on Instagram and Facebook with my name and my images, my videos, right? And this person was asking people for money, and they're also telling them to invest in some schemes. So I was already spooked, like there's somebody like watching me and stuff. So when she started saying this, it made me feel like, there's some truth to it, you know, like there's some weight to it. So at the time, my partner was listening in on this phone call with me because I was in a cab. And so even he was like, huh? What's that about? So immediately we decided to go to the apartment to go check it out. And so here we are in the house and we're like, we're trying to listen, right? We hear nothing. And so I called the girl, Sarah, and I'm like, can you come back home and maybe tell us where the noises are coming from, because we hear nothing, right? And she goes, no, I don't really want anyone to know that I live there. I don't want them to see me. So just try, you can go on the floors below us or above us and just try to listen. And I'm like, okay. We go below us, listen. We knocked. One guy that lives with a dog, a Chinese guy, not a foreigner. We go upstairs, is a lady that does some sort of exercise, group exercises. And then we go back home. So now we're sitting there waiting for her, and she finally comes. And I'm like, dude, we hear nothing. What are you hearing? It's like, no, listen, you don't hear that? Like, listen. Yeah, I don't really feel comfortable here. I don't feel safe because there are people that are threatening you, and now they're threatening me because they know that you're not here throughout the day, and they're threatening whoever is in the house. They say, we know this is not Irene. Whoever lives here, we're going to harm you and stuff. So I'm not worried for her, right? This is how good I was. I'm worried for her. So we go on and ciao. This thing goes on for like 2-3 days straight, right? So I leave the apartment. I didn't sleep there that night. Actually, I never slept her there while she was there, funny enough, because it didn't feel, you know. So after that, it went on for like 2-3 more days. She kept calling. Irene, this and this is happening. More people are threatening your name. She said they're recruiting others to threaten you. And it's like they're having meetings at night, and I can hear them, and I don't feel safe here. I don't want to stay here anymore. This is 2 weeks into a 1-year lease that we just signed. A 1-year lease that I didn't want to sign because I was going to leave. But I felt it was convenient. And, you know, it's just... now I was getting worked up, because it became nonstop, and it got to a point where it got to my school, and my teachers were calling me, and I think this is the part where I started to get mad and started to get agitated about it, because when my teachers called me, they said, oh, hey, Irene, your roommate Sarah told us that you guys are being threatened, so you've moved out of the apartment. Which I was then like, but that's not true. I haven't been sleeping at home long before she came. So me not staying home now has nothing to do with the fact that there are people who she claims are threatening us. And this threat, so far, only she knows of. I've not heard anything. I've not seen anything. So far, it's just what she says she's hearing. So the story blows up, and she contacts her family back in Namibia. I think some of them are in Japan or something like that. However, whoever ends up calling the embassy in Beijing, and then the embassy now looks for me, and she didn't give them my contact. So I go looking for the embassy, and I'm like, yeah, there's a situation here. And so the embassy goes like, are you Irene? We've been looking for you because we received a complaint of such and such, and you live with this person, and the family is concerned and all that. And I'm like, guys, to this day, and this is like 3-4 days after the very first day she told me the story that there are people threatening me. I'm like, to this day, I have not heard any single thing that she claims she's been hearing. Now, we do have another friend who's a guy, and we're just going to call him Paul, right? We have Paul. So Paul is also a Namibian, and Paul knew everything that was happening, all right? So Paul also tries to interfere, and he goes to our apartment to try and listen to what is actually happening. He hears nothing. Paul calls another friend to come and listen. They hear nothing. You get what I'm saying? Okay. So next thing I hear is she's not living in the apartment anymore. She's sleeping at Paul's place. Now, it just so happens that as she's temporarily staying at Paul's place, she's still hearing things, which now makes Paul go like, okay, maybe there is something else going on here, right? So, ooh, child, it was a whole thing. Okay, it was a whole situation, and it made me feel so unsafe. It made me feel like someone was watching me. Someone was like intensively plotting on my downfall. That's how it felt. And I was battling, right? And this is where I now, like now that it's been months after, I'm able to realize how that was a spiritual warfare. Everything to do with the spiritual realm. Because I cannot even bring myself to think of anything I could have done physically, anything I could have said, or because in as much as I was trying to keep myself safe, I was very adamant on trying to understand why this was happening, right? Because I feel like we live in a world where such cases are true. And given the fact that there has been accounts of someone pretending to be me, right? And now here's another story that says people are literally physically plotting to harm you. That was traumatic is a nice way to put it. Well, fast forward, I think was it like a few days after that, there was an event happening in my city. For those of you that are in China, in my city, you would probably remember the all-white party. There was an all-white party that happened, and I was invited to this party. I bought, not even invited, I personally paid for a ticket to go to this party. And everything leading up to that day, it was on a Saturday. I remember so well. It was on a Saturday. I had gone to the mall to buy a dress for it because it was all white. Obviously, I didn't have something, so I had gone. I was preparing to go to this party, and I remember going down the stairs like fully dressed, and I was about to call the cab, and something in me, like just something in me said, Irene, don't go. Like, I can say this with so much conviction in my heart that was the Holy Spirit just shifting my trajectory and just saying, no. Because my partner even called and he's like, aren't you going to the party? Like, he saw me literally dressed. Like, what's going on? Aren't you going? And I just said, you know what? No, I'm not going. I don't want to go anymore. I don't know what it is. I don't know why I feel this way, but I don't want to go anymore. And I can remember how terrible I felt because one of the organizers for the party is a good friend of mine, and I had missed his previous activities because I wasn't in the city. So I was betting on going to this one. Like, I had told him I couldn't make it for the other ones, but I'm coming to this one. So for me to then cancel on him yet another time, that weighed so heavy on me. But that gut feeling in me was way too strong to even just talk myself out of. And so I ended up not going. And funny enough, and this is why I say I could clearly see God's hand in the whole thing. Because I remember that moment, like literally when I just texted my friend and I said, I'm not coming tonight. I immediately texted another friend and I asked him for the location of church. Now, this friend has invited me to church before, like months before, but I never went. So this night that I didn't go to the party, I was like, I just, something prompted me to just ask him for the location for church. And the next Sunday, like obviously Saturday, Sunday, I got up and I went to church, and oh God. I went to church and I felt so heavy. I felt so heavy. And I think I felt heavy because as soon as I walked in the church, I sat down. Obviously, we had the service, and I felt this overwhelming, just an overwhelming wind of love and safety and care. It felt so welcoming, one, and two, I felt so safe that I could just let go, that I didn't have to hold it all together. And that was the first time I had been to church in about 7 years. And I look back now and I say that was God all along, because if that incident with that girl had not happened, I would not have found myself there in church. Because I remember I've never prayed as hard as I did during the times that I was trying to understand why someone would wish me such amount of harm or such distaste, or why anyone would really be plotting anything against me or anything against anybody, just praying against deceit and evil and wrongdoing and just all those things. I have never prayed as much as I did then. And I can truly say now, that was like as horrific as it was for me to go through, I would not have the relationship I have now with God if not for that one instant. And I went to church that day, and I never wanted to leave church again. I never wanted to leave God's presence again. Not because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't stay, but because I got to learn about God for the first time. I grew up in a Catholic home, in a Christian home, and like most of you would go to church every Sunday so devotedly, but also being young, we didn't really understand it, or at least personally I didn't understand it. And I would read the Bible. I love to read the Bible. Like when they would call people to read the Bible in church, I was that person. I love to read the Bible, but I never understood any of it. And when I came to China, I was 18 years old, I think. So again, I was clueless, I knew God, I knew of him, I knew that he was the God that I chose to follow, but I didn't know what it meant to walk with him. I didn't know what it meant to have such a close relationship with him and talk to him as I would talk to her friend. I had no idea how it felt to actually recite a verse and get through a difficult moment, right? So that is how that's how I found my way back to God. And I feel like I never really found the way, so I can't really say back because I was never really there. I had an idea, I had a hint, but this is one that I'm intentionally choosing, and I am loving it. Listen, the joy that I get when I know it's Sunday tomorrow, like, oh, I delight in spending time with God by myself, with the other people at church, talking about him with my partner, my sister, my family. Like, it has brought so much joy to my heart, and I have no room to be angry about what happened. If anything, I'm grateful that it happened. I'm grateful that something so terrible led me to something so beautiful and something so rare and just so divine, you know. This is only the beginning. I'm still learning, obviously. I am still growing. I'm still reading a lot. I have expanded my library. I am taking out time of my day, and I'm just encouraged to be intentional. So I really wanted to share this testimony because a few weeks back we did a service on how sometimes you don't really have to try to change people, but rather you can do that by sharing your own testimonies, by sharing what you're experiencing in your own life. And by doing that, you have no clue of who you could touch, whose heart you could change, you know. So if this resonates with anybody, if it inspires anybody, if it does anything to anybody, I'm just overjoyed that I can smile today, and I am back on social media because that incident made me go into hiding, and it took away my joy and my smile, and I was just in a really dark corner that I never wish upon anyone. So in case you're wondering, we ended up leaving the apartment. I told Sarah that it's not gonna work and she should just pack up and leave, and that meant that we broke contract, so I never got my deposit back. And I had told her that she breached contract basically because she was the one who wasn't comfortable and she was the one that wanted to leave, so she had to pay the deposit because the landlord wasn't going to pay it anymore, so she had to pay to me. And initially she agreed to paying it, but after a month or two I texted her to ask when she was going to pay it, and I learned that she blocked my contact. So that's where it stands. I haven't seen her since. I haven't talked to her since. I wish her healing. I wish her safety, health, joy, because listen, when you experience God's joy, it's the kind of joy that you wish everybody has, and I wish that upon her as well. So thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you in my next video.